that have been broken since they've taken office. And they should take credit for that. They did promise this tax credit, and they have delivered it. And we actually thought it was a good idea. In fact, we campaigned on it the penultimate election. We thought it was a good idea back then, but since then we've done some investigation on it. And we dropped it because it's not a good idea. New Brunswick and Manitoba have instituted similar programs, and they have had no net gain in graduates. And it seems to me that if we are going to implement programs at a time of restraint, then we should be darn sure that they're actually effective. We should be really certain that, in fact, they do what we say they're going to do. This program does not pass that smell test. And even the student groups don't want this program. They say it's not what they need. It's not of help to students. Students who need to find access to education need help up front. And I'm not saying that when they come out they're not going to be poor, but there are a lot of students who simply cannot afford to go to school because of the high cost. And so the money that we're spending on this program, I would submit to you, would be much better spent on a program that helps students up front, that helps students get into post-secondary education. Instead, what we have is a program that comes at the end. And the problem with it is that students aren't staying here because they can't find good-paying jobs. They have to pay off their student loans. The evidence shows that this program does not do what the minister says it does, because the kids who actually are staying here would have stayed here anyway. They're not staying because they're getting a graduate tax credit. They're staying here because they have family or other commitments here. We have students coming out with massive, massive amounts of debt. And because there are fewer jobs here, they cannot stay here. They go to Alberta, they go to Ontario, where they're going to have lots of job opportunities, where the salaries are higher, where they can pay off their student loans. This is not helping our students. Now, the cost of the tax credit is 18 million in 2010, 23 million in 2011, and this is according to the Alliance of Nova Scotia Students Associations. And I must say, it was interesting listening to CBC Radio this morning, because in fact we had both ANSA and the Canadian Federation of Students on, representatives from both, and they were both saying the same thing. This is not what we need, this is not what we want. It doesn't help our students cope with massive debt. Jobs help our students cope with massive debt afterwards, and we don't have that yet. And on a number of occasions, the minister has spoken about evidence-based programs. When I asked the minister about pilot projects and that sort of thing, and she was very pragmatic, saying that if we're going to institute a program, we want to make sure it works, so this is why we do pilot programs. She was very good about explaining it to me. But in this particular case, there isn't any evidence that they work, and so I don't quite in fact, there's evidence to the contrary, that when New Brunswick and Manitoba instituted the same kind of a program, it didn't work for them. So I have to say that I agree with the student groups who are saying, what's the point of this? If we are going to spend $18 million this year, $23 million next year, we should be spending that money effectively. We should be spending that money in a way that will make a big difference for our students, not in giving them tax credits for something they were going to do anyway. So the Liberal Party feels that the government of Nova Scotia should eliminate the graduate retention rebate program and replace it with something that would, first of all, they should talk to the students and find out what do they want, what do they need. And we should I know that the minister has written in her political speak column that it's a good program for keeping university and college graduates in Nova Scotia, and she says quite rightly that is crucial to our province's economic future. An educated and well-trained workforce helps keep local organizations strong and businesses competitive, and this investment should provide graduates with an economic advantage to staying here in Nova Scotia. And what she says is true in the sense that those are things that we want. The problem is this program does not achieve that. Now, previously, during question period, I asked the minister about the graduate tax credit, and on October 1st, she said, "Mr. Speaker, that rebate is as much of a worker recruitment and retention tool as it is to keep graduate students in the province." So we have sort of a bit of a contradiction there. But I have to say that, to me, it does not make sense to institute a program that does not do what we expect it to do. And it's $18 million in 2010. It's $23 million in 2011. Yesterday, the Minister of Finance said in the House, "What would you cut? What would you cut?" He wanted to know what we would cut in order to pay for Lucentis. And I would submit to you that it makes sense to keep people from going blind rather than paying graduates to do what they were going to do anyway. And that is what the evidence shows, that in New Brunswick and Manitoba, when they instituted the same kind of program, there was no net effect for its graduates. Mr. Speaker, I'm almost done. 3 more minutes. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to go over or anything like that. I do believe that the minister is genuine in her desire to keep graduates here. She knows, and I agree, that it's very important for us to retain workers, and that this is a problem that we are facing, that it is looming, that we are seeing some effects of already here in Nova Scotia. But I have to say that it seems wrong-headed of me to institute a program that has no evidence behind it, that in fact has evidence that contradicts it, and that in fact we should be helping students to get in to education. We should be helping students to not have to take out vast amounts of loans to be able to complete their education, and we should help them find jobs afterwards. We should be doing job creation to make sure that they stay here. But to say, here is some money to stay here, when the only ones who are taking us up on it are in fact the kids who would have done it anyway, it does not make good economic sense to me. And I think that at a time when we are cutting back, when we are looking at various kinds of restraints, it does not make good economic sense, and it is not. There are so many areas in education where we could use money to great effect, that to spend it on something that does not have evidence behind it does not make sense to me.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This issue can actually be viewed through 3 different lenses, finance and education and labour and workforce development. And I guess since I wear 2 of those hats, that's why I was delegated to late debate tonight. So I am grateful for the opportunity to speak about the graduate retention rebate. And this is a very important goal for our province, because we want to encourage skilled young Nova Scotians to stay or return and build a life here in Nova Scotia. And the purpose of the graduate retention rebate is exactly that. It's an effort to retain or bring back our graduates. And we want very much to keep the talent and the expertise and the enthusiasm that young Nova Scotians can bring to our workforce. And as I've said many times, often on the floor of this chamber, the graduate retention rebate is designed as an attraction and retention tool. It's not a tool to increase access or affordability of tuition. As important as those are, we have other processes to aid in that particular part. We want a continuum, a menu of supports for young people so that they are both encouraged to continue on to post-secondary education, but also encouraged after they graduate to stay here in the province. And it's no secret that we want these graduates to start their careers here at home rather than take jobs in other provinces or other parts of the world. And if Nova Scotia's economy is going to grow, we need those talented young workers here in Nova Scotia. So we want them to return to the roots or put down roots and help them get started and help them with the financial burden that they often face when they graduate from our post-secondary institutions. So at some point, I hope to have time to actually go over how the rebate works. But I'm going to continue on and talk a little bit about the changing demographics in our province. And that's why this rebate program is being tested in this new context. Soon, many of our workforce are set to retire. And that's going to create a void that will need to be filled in order for us to sustain our economy. And many of those positions that will open up because of retirements will undoubtedly go to these young graduates from both Nova Scotian colleges and universities and Nova Scotians who have attended those colleges and universities outside Nova Scotia. So to those who are just starting their careers in Nova Scotia after years of research and study and training, our message is simple. We want to help you and we want you to stay or return to this province. Nova Scotia is and always will be hiring. And the rebate is our way of giving new graduates a head start. Each young mind that we manage to keep is like a seed that will grow to become a much larger plant in the garden that is our province's economy. Now, over the last few weeks, I've heard a lot of discussion from students and student organizations about the rebate program. And the graduate retention rebate is a new program. It's a commitment that our government made and one we intend to keep. And we're going to test it for several years, evaluate it, fine-tune it if necessary. But we certainly see it as a very important tool in our menu of supports to people interested in post-secondary education and in staying in this province to start their careers, raise their families, and build a life here. I'm confident that in time, this program will be very effective in helping new graduates begin fulfilling careers and be productive, successful Nova Scotians. Now, I understand that many students and parents are concerned about student debt, and the province has measures in place to help students with debt management. There's the Repayment Assistance Program and the Payment Deferral Program. They help students manage their debt while they are getting established, and I give credit to the previous government for their support of those debt management assistance programs. For 2010-2011, bursaries from the Nova Scotia University Student Bursary Trust will provide students who are Nova Scotian students with $1,283 to put towards their tuition. And our government is continuing those valuable programs because we want to help all Nova Scotian students, regardless of whether they choose to stay in the province after they finish school or not. Because my government acknowledges that starting a career in Nova Scotia is not for everyone. And I applaud young Nova Scotians who choose to start their careers elsewhere. And it's my hope that they'll always keep in mind that they have the option to return to Nova Scotia. Nova Scotians are among the brightest and most talented workers in the world. And no matter where they decide to live and work, their home province will always be proud of them. We want our young people to know that their contribution to our province would be valued. So while we commend those who find work in other places, we want them to seriously consider opportunities right here at home. And I hear every day from families whose young people are returning to this province. They're optimistic that there's a future here, that the economy is turning around, and it's so encouraging. This includes the generation that my own sons are in. And I'm delighted one of them just returned to the province last week, and many of their friends and former colleagues are coming back to Nova Scotia. So it's exciting to hear about those things. We have a top-notch post-secondary university and college system, and I want to give credit to all those institutions. We have 11 universities and 13 Nova Scotia Community College campuses, along with a significant number of private career colleges. And we rival any province in quality and variety of educational choices. So all combined, our institutions are producing hundreds of Nova Scotian graduates each year. And this rebate program is an incentive to those graduates. It's our province's way of telling graduates that we are most interested in them and the skills that they have to offer. I just want to finish by thanking everyone for raising this important topic in the House of Assembly this evening. It's important that we give this rebate a chance to work. Certainly, it's encouraging. I just heard as recently as today from a family that's benefited from applying for it for last year. And as these stories multiply, and we do our evaluation of the success and the take-up of the numbers of people who will take advantage of this rebate program, I think we'll be able to thoroughly investigate its value. And I just want to say that our government encourages young Nova Scotians to look for opportunities to build a life, raise a family, and have a strong, long career here in Nova Scotia. And certainly this graduate retention rebate, I think, is going to be a useful tool in encouraging young people after they graduate from community college and university to stay in this province and or return if they've graduated from one of the recognized universities and colleges under this program. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the Minister, and I recognize the position she's in. I recognize the challenges she faces, and I would like to say that I believe that she has a sincere interest in doing what's best for all students in the province. I'd also like to acknowledge the critic from the official opposition and former critic and all members in the House who I think do understand that having an educated population in our province has been and will continue to be an asset. I do recognize that the minister faces a lot of challenges with where's the best place to put the dollars in an education budget. And one of the lessons that I learned very quickly, and I'm sure she will learn if she hasn't already, is that when students in our universities and community colleges have a message, it's wise to listen to them. We, back in 2007, began what we called a student assistance review, and I'm sure that document is there for the reading of the minister. But the intent of that was to go out and to listen to what university students were having to say, and to make sure that we heard what they had to say, and that they had an opportunity to present that in a constructive manner. And university students appreciated that and were most respectful and most cooperative, and provided a lot of information and direction. That the result of that review was released in April of 2008, and it did very much to guide the decisions of our government as to where we could use our limited dollars to the students' best advantage. One of the things that we had done was to begin to bring the tuition down to the national average, because it was well above the national average. And we put together a plan that would bring that to the national average by 2010-11. And I'll be anxious to talk to the minister about where that strategy is at this point. But it certainly was recognized, as Stats Canada recognized that as being a strategy that certainly was worthy of recognition and had been effective, because their results that they shared in 2008-9 showed that we were the only province in Canada who had not had an increase in our tuition. Part of that was due to the Memorandum of Understanding with universities, which froze tuition, and another part was due to efforts to put money into helping students with that tuition cost. Which brings me to the students and the message that they gave us during that process. And they were saying very much that they believed that the dollars that were needed to be upfront dollars. We had a graduate tax credit at that time, and they were, although they appreciated that, their message was clear, and I understand it. If we don't have the money to go to college, then getting a credit when we graduate is meaningless. And that was a very strong message, and that caused us to look at how can we make sure that they do have the dollars to go to university. And so, not to be necessarily critical of a program, I would ask the minister to give some thought to that, because that was very much their message, and I think it's their message today. I think that's what I'm hearing from students, from all of the student union groups, and from the students at community college, and from the 43 private career colleges. We have a huge population here of students, and we want to make sure, as the minister says, that they stay. But in order for them to get the university training that they need, they have to have some ability to get registered in the universities. And you know, when I was minister, I had an opportunity to visit all the universities, and when I stopped, I remember at Acadia University one day, I was there and I was meeting with the executive of the student council, and I was asking them what their home province was, and there were 5 in the room. 4 of them, their home province was not Nova Scotia. So I was intrigued by that, and I said, okay, what brought you to Nova Scotia? What brought you to Acadia University? Because that's where we were. And I was very proud as a Nova Scotian and as the minister at the time to hear them say the quality education program that's delivered in universities in Nova Scotia is one of the things that attracted them. And this was at the height of high tuition costs. And so I said, so tuition didn't drive you away. They said it was the quality of the programming, the reputation that Nova Scotia has for high-quality university programs that brought them. Some of them also said they appreciated small universities. Some said they appreciated a smaller community, a smaller town. They were from Ontario and Alberta. But I thought their message about quality education was something of which we should all be very proud. So for students who are coming here, regardless of the cost of tuition, or for students in Nova Scotia who want to go to university to get their training, I'm not convinced that an after-graduate tax is the best use of those dollars. We looked at putting together, and we did put a bursary trust fund together. We put $66 million into that, which goes directly to tuition when students register for their very first year. And in fact, it appears as a credit on their tuition invoice when they get it in the beginning. And that was one of the things that students said they appreciated. My recommendation would be put more of the money that you have available into that kind of a bursary upfront program. And I think that students will probably tell the minister that. Maybe they're telling the media that. I hope they tell the minister that, because if she doesn't get those that direction and those suggestions, then it's hard to act on them. The other thing that I think we did, and I enjoyed as a minister, was to sit down in a very casual, small group setting with students. They are very constructive. They have great insight, and they have lots of ideas, and they're experiencing it. We can talk about what we think is good for somebody else, but let's talk to the people who are impacted directly by it. And they're very willing to talk. They don't, they're not shy about expressing their opinion, but they did it in a constructive way. And they will let you know when they appreciate that. They'll also let you know when they don't. So I think listening to them is a bit of advice I might pass on. The minister spoke about debt reduction. And we know that some students do have to use student loans in order to go through university. And so you give them some incentive, some dollars, and some breaks on their tuition so they can begin the program. And then if they do have to have a student loan, you can give them some help with the repayment. The minister mentioned, and again I'll be asking about the status of this program, is when we're looking at the debt repayment plan, where the repayment amount is directly related to the income of the student. So if you have, somebody who doesn't get a very high-paying job when they first graduate, then the amount of money they have to pay back on their loan is directly related to that income. And so that program, again, was well received by students. And the other program that we put in place again was direct lend, where we were able to reduce the interest rate by 2%. Students were getting their loan at 0.5 above prime. And so there were a number of things, and I'm sure that it takes, as the minister said, a menu of or a whole group of programs that come together to help students. My comment specific to this is I would suggest that the dollars would have been better spent up front so that more students would be able to begin their university program, and I think that will give us more opportunities for more students to get the education they need so they can contribute to a healthy economy in our province, and they will stay in Nova Scotia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The time allocated for late debate this evening has now expired. I'd like to thank all the honourable members for having taken part in tonight's late debate. The motion for adjournment was made earlier. The House will now rise to sit again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.